And then let me share my screen. So you all are able to see my screen, correct? Perfect. My name is Glen, Garrett. I'm the Enterprise Solution Specialist that covers UVA. My colleague Stephanie Bragg is on the call as well. Stephanie is Client Relationship Specialist. In her role, she is essentially another layer of customer support. So anything related to your use of iClicker, Stephanie is there to help, you know, with whatever you need, both from an instructor as well as from a faculty standpoint. So I want you to be sure and be aware of Stephanie and what her role is in the process. She's going to monitor the chat window for us today. So any questions you have, put them in chat. You know, the group is, you know, it looks like we're going to have, I think we've got 7 on here now. So if you have a question, don't hesitate to ask if you want, or use the chat window either way. I know this is a busy week. I want to be respectful of your time. My goal is to finish my part of the presentation by around 1/4 to the hour, so I can leave some time for questions. And also, so if you all have another appointment coming up at the top of the hour, you'll have plenty of time to get ready and get to that. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started. I am recording this. Take as many notes as you want. I will be sending out the recording, and then also links to articles from our support site, which will cover everything that we're going to be talking about today. Those links are designed to be used, to be shared. I've divided them up by instructor links and things for students. So if there's anything that you want to include in your syllabus, forward on to students, please feel free to do so. That's what they're there for. So just to give a quick overview of iClicker. iClicker has been around since the late 1990s. It was developed at the University of Illinois. You can see 2 of our proprietors there. Kind of fast forward, what we're going to be talking about today is iClicker Cloud, which is our cloud-based solution. It means all of the data that you collect from your students is stored in the cloud. It means that you can access your information from anywhere. It also gives some additional capabilities. So if you are on this and you've used iClicker Classic in the past, you will see there are some additional capabilities, and I will make a point to point that out as we go through the presentation. Here's just a quick synopsis, a quick comparison. If you use Classic, that's on the left side of your screen. You can see what some of the differences are. Again, we've talked about the cloud-based storage, but there are some additional question types which we're going to go over. There is a study guide feature where if you're sharing your content with your students, they can log into iClicker, into their account outside of class, and use any of those questions as a study tool as they prepare for that next lecture, that next test, whatever you might have coming up. And then there's also an attendance feature built in. So I'll do my best to point out differences for those of you that are familiar with iClicker as we go through it. The thing I will say, if you are a former iClicker user, to hopefully put you at ease, you don't have to make any changes to your presentation that you've used previously. Cloud uses the exact same screen capture, meaning you can lecture and present from anything. I'm going to show you a couple of different examples of that as we go through. But again, to be clear, you are not required to create your question or re-author your question content in our platform. You're presenting locally with the applications that you already use. And again, if you've got a scenario where you've got some students in person and you have some students that are joining you remotely, you'd be doing essentially what I'm going to be doing today, launching iClicker, presenting my polling question and having your students respond. Move this. So again, purposes of using iClicker, using student response, you know, there's nothing here that's unique to iClicker. However, hopefully in going through this, you'll see some ways that we feel like we make the use of a student response system in the classroom easier, a little bit more flexible for you, so that you can use it purely as a tool and it's not something that you're going to have to spend a lot of time with from a technology standpoint. And again, what we're talking about is the informal assessment piece in class. You know, this is where you're going to kind of let students find out what they know and probably more importantly what they don't know, so you can deal with that misconception, you know, and as you move forward in your team. Attendance, as I mentioned, and I'll show you this slide, we do have an attendance piece that lets you take attendance separate from any points you award for polling. You have some options there, one of which is you could use geolocation if you would want to do that, whereby you would require your students to be inside a geo fence that you're able to put up before they're able to join your session. Now, obviously, if you've got everybody meeting face-to-face, that would work fine. However, if you are in a scenario where some of your students are remote, you can still use the attendance capabilities, but obviously you'd want to not enable the geolocation because those students would not be able to check in. The other thing we want to talk about is focus mode. What focus mode does, you're going to be allowing your students to use a mobile device in the classroom. So what focus mode does is it's going to give you, if you turn focus mode on, you're giving your students the option or giving them a report of how they use that device that day. It doesn't prevent them from leaving the device. It just is going to tell that student how that device was used that particular day. The idea being we want students to use their mobile device to respond to the questions that you're asking them during class. And speaking of mobile devices, a quick definition of what that means as far as iClicker is concerned. Smartphone, we have an app for both Android and for iPhone, or students can use any browser-based device that can connect to the internet. So a tablet, laptop, desktop, any or all of that will allow students to use iClicker Cloud via a mobile device in the class. So here is a quick look at the question types. We're going to go through and I'll show you some examples of each of these, pointing out some of the things that are different. And then also, once we run a session and have some data that we've collected, I want to spend some time in the grade book so you can see some things there and talk about a couple of things in settings, some of which are the same, and then some of which are unique. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to launch iClicker. And I'm also going to get my student device active. So give me just a minute while I'm doing that. Well, I've started my class. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to pull my toolbar here. So this is my toolbar. So those of you that have used iClicker in the past, the toolbar is going to look more similar than different. However, it does have some additional capabilities. And then what I'm also going to do is I'm going to pull my phone over so you can see what this looks like from a student standpoint. So let me wait. So let's first talk about what a student's going to do. So this is obviously my student device. I'm going to come in here and I'm going to come to where I have my Reef application or my iClicker application, which is here. Click on iClicker and I've got this open. Well, what if I need to add a course? I'm going to come up here to the plus sign. I'm going to pick my institution. Obviously, you pick the University of Virginia. I'm using Macmillan Learning as my fictitious institution. So you can see once I populate that, I can choose Macmillan Learning. I can type in the course that I'm using, which in this case is Garrett Demo Course. And once I get that bit of information here, I see the course, I'm going to click on it, I'm going to add it. And so now that course that's been added to my menu for students. When I come to class, I'll simply click on the Garrett Demo Course, and you'll see that I have the option to join. The reason I have the option to join is I, as an instructor, have launched my course. I've got the toolbar active on my screen. So I'm going to go ahead and join the session. I've got my course in focus mode. So a student is going to see this reminder that you are in a focus mode class. It's going to give them just a quick overview of what that is, and then let them continue on to that focus mode class. Now they're in class, they're checked in, they're ready to begin. We try to be very clear in the messaging. So in a situation like this, a student understands why they're seeing what they're seeing on their screen. So I'm going to move this over here. So let's get to our first question. I'm going to go ahead and go through this kind of quickly. Really what this is just giving some background on best practices for questions. In simple terms, you don't want to make everything too difficult. You don't want all your questions to be too easy. You really want to question around areas where based on your teaching experience, students are gonna typically face some challenges and/or where there's a common wrong answer. So you can make sure that you're identifying that. and that you're using your time in class to correct those misconceptions. So let's ask our first polling question. I'm going to move this over here just a minute. So again, you'll notice I have polling, quizzing, I have my roster, and this is where I would end my course. If I open polling, I can open and see the different question types that are available. This is a multiple choice question. I'm in multiple choice mode. I'm going to open the polling question. Now, the first time I'm going to get this because I'm actually using dual monitor, so I want to make sure that I am displaying the correct screen, which I am. It's going to open the poll, and it's now pushed this question out. You have a couple of options as an instructor on what displays during class, and we'll cover those when we get to settings in just a minute. I have elected to push the question out to the student device while the poll is active. So that means that the student is going to see their question on their phone, just like you're seeing here. When I submit an answer, you can see two things happen. That answer stays colored in, and it also tells me confirmation that my answer was received. So just as with a physical remote, I can change my answer as many times as I want, and that it will remember and store the last response. Now, Stephanie is also on my class, in my class, so she's one of my respondents. And then I've got a couple of physical iClickers here. I'm sure you may have seen these because they've been used very widely. This is a hybrid scenario, so if you've got the base plugged in, and just for those of you that are not familiar, this is what the iClicker base looks like. That's only necessary if a student is using a physical clicker, but I've done that just to get a few more responses that have come in. So I can stop my poll, and I could show the results if I want to, but I'm also able to see my results on my base. And I'm going to say, I know from looking at this that, I'm not necessarily pleased with the results. So I might say, I'm going to do something here. I'm going to maybe use the pen tool, for example. I'm going to give my students a hint. So I'm going to come in here, grab my pen tool, and I can draw a hint for my students. I might say, and again, y'all bear with me, my drawing's not the best, but I'll explain what it is. So what I've done, I'm going to tell my students that is an escalator. The student is walking up the escalator. The escalator is going down, and the speeds are equal. So with that being my extra hint, I'm going to open this same polling question a second time and give my students the opportunity to ask it again. You can see there, and then you can see from, if I come back over here to my phone, that when I come back in here and wake my app back up, it's going to push that same, whatever's on the screen, that's what it captures, that's what it pushes out. So hopefully by doing that with my hint, my students are going to realize that the correct answer is actually C. I can close the poll, I can show the results, and another thing I can do is if I click here, it looks like two files laying on top of each other. I can open up a comparison graph, and I can compare the results of two questions. These happen to be in order, but they don't have to be. You can compare the results of any two polling questions, kind of talk about, hey, here's what the distribution was the first time we asked the question. Here's where we got. You can grade it by confirming that's the right answer. You see that's pushed out to my student device. And then when I close this and move on, I'm ready to go ask my next question. So Stephanie, if any questions come up in so far in chat, are there any questions that anyone has now that we've asked just one question?
Nothing in the chat, so if anybody has anything right now.
Okay. All right, let's move on to another question type. So what I'm going to do here, let me discard my. I got to discard my pen tool. Hang on just a second. Here we go. So what I've done here, this is a looks like it's just a screen capture. But what I've done is I have actually moved in. I'm in YouTube. I'm at a video of a skull. So again, I'm completely out of PowerPoint now. I'm going to let this skull rotate for just a minute, and then I want to get it to a point where I want to ask a couple of polling questions around the skull. I'm gonna pause it here. So I could do a number of things here. I could come up here and say, I'm going to ask a target question, and my target question is going to be, I want my student to show me where the nasal bone is. So let me wait, my phone keeps going away. Let me get this back awake again. So I can put this in target mode, And what I'm going to do when I put my question in target mode, I'm asking my student to point to an area on their device where they want to submit as their answer. So, and just as I try to do that, the phone went to sleep on me, but I'll go ahead and do it, and then you can see what the results look like. I'm going to send my answer in, and I'll go ahead and close the poll. And now if I open this up, you can see that I've got 2 results that have come in. So I can come here if I wanted to grade this, I can just hover over it, click here, and then anything that I leave in green when I save this is going to be stored as the correct answer. So, another thing I could come in here, I could say, maybe I want to ask a short answer question. Maybe I want to ask a second question from this. So my short answer question is going to be, what is this bone here? What's the scientific name for the bone here? Maybe we might call that the jawbone. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to open this up, open my polling question up. I'm in short answer mode. So now a student's going to come into their device and they can enter up to 140 character answer. And I'm going to send that in. So Steffi and I have we've got both of our answers in. I'm in count up mode, so it's going to stay open until I decide to close the poll. So I'm going to simply close it. And now I can open up and I can see what the results are. I can see that both students got this answer, both students spelled it correctly. So if I wanted to, I could go ahead and grade the question. A couple of things I'll say about this. There is an other option. The reason there's an other option is, let's say that nobody got the correct answer or nobody necessarily spelled the answer correctly, then that gives me the option to type in what that correct answer is, and that's what will be stored. That's what will be recorded as the correct answer. Also, if I wanted to show my results as a word cloud, I can just simply click on the word cloud option. Obviously, we both answer it the same, but if you had a larger number of students, the more that would answer the same response, that would be bigger and bolder. So again, depending on the discipline that you teach, you can decide if that's something that would be useful for you in your class. And when I'm ready to move on, I can just kind of simply come up here and close out of here, and I can get back into my PowerPoint. And I'm ready to move on to my next topic. So that might be, let's say I wanted to ask a short answer as a word cloud. I won't answer that. I won't do this now because we literally just kind of did the same thing. But you just ask the question, get those responses, pop that up as a word cloud. Again, every question doesn't have to be a content question. You can ask questions like this just to kind of get the feel of the class, just a kind of a discussion starter type question. This would be another one that looks like a short answer, but it looks like a multiple choice, but actually what I'm asking students to do is to look at a sequence of events and put them in their correct order. So again, this would be, I'd be in short answer mode. I'm going to open this up, and then I can come in here and I can submit my response and hit the send key. And so we've got one response that's come in. Obviously, you can also do short answer here on a iClicker 2. So I can go ahead and put this response in. So let me do that really quick. So we've got 3 responses now that have come in. Again, I can stop the poll. I can show the results and I can see what those are. I could go ahead and again grade this if I wanted. I'll save this one so I can grade this one after class. But this would give me a reason to come in here and talk about why the wrong answer is incorrect. I've just built a slide in here. If you're a soccer player, if you know soccer, you'll know that when a player gets a red card, that team has to play short. So they do not get to substitute and replace the player that has been sent off. So again, it's just a way you could dispel that misconception, cover that, and then move on to your next topic. Next question type we have, and this is another one that is unique to iClicker Cloud, is multiple answer. What you're doing with a multiple answer question is you're telling students, hey, look at this, look at these possible answers. Anywhere from 1 to all 5 of them are correct. So again, I'll just open the question in multiple answer mode, and then I can enter anything from 1, 2 to all 5 being the correct answer. And again, you can use a physical clicker as well. And so now I've got 2 answers that have been sent in. I'll wait for Stephanie to give me one more. What's that?
I sent mine in.
Okay. Oh yeah, you got to hit the send button. I'm sitting here looking at my send button and didn't send in. So I've got 3 answers that have come in. Now, a couple of things I like about this. You can see what all of the different, we had 2 for A, 2 for B, 2 for C, 1 for E. I can grade this, and when I grade this and show the results, it's going to show me the overview. But if I click on responses, it's going to show me what answer is correct, what answer is partially correct, and then what answer would be totally incorrect. I like this partially correct because if I click down, for example, I say, okay, this student got B and C, they got these correct, but they added A in. So if you had a large number of students that did this, you might then come back here and say, okay, let's spend a few minutes talking about why reinforcement is not a fundamental concept of classical conditioning. So again, it's a way you can use the responses real time, dispel that misconception, and then move on to that next topic. Any question that you ask in iClicker can be asked in anonymous polling mode. Again, 2 things: you want to make sure that your question type matches your polling mode that you're in, and then you put an iClicker anonymous polling mode here. I'm going to open the poll, and again, what anonymous polling means to iClicker is if you're giving participation points, it does count towards the participation point percentage that they would need to get. But because it's an anonymous polling mode, you wouldn't know how an individual student responded. You would know that they responded, but not how. So that means that you can give them participation point, but you can't give them performance points for this. If I close the poll and open the results chart, you'll notice that you see what the results are. Again, you could use this to begin a discussion, but the results are grayed out, so this can't be graded. The other thing I would tell you is if your next question is not anonymous, then take it out of anonymous polling mode so you can in fact grade that next question that you might ask that does have a correct answer. Quizzing, the difference between a poll and a quiz is with polling, you're asking one question, everybody's responding to that question, and then you're moving on to the next polling question. With quizzing, it's a way you can give a multiple question, low stakes quiz. Again, this is not a proctored, not meant to be a proctored, test, midterm, anything like that. It's just, I want to give that 10 question quiz, but I've got a couple hundred students. I don't have the bandwidth to grade that. If I gave it on paper, you can put a quiz up that students would answer using their own device. So the way you're going to do a quiz is we're going to come up here to the quizzing screen. We're going to pick how many questions we have, and you click on start. This is really, this should be saved, because to actually start the quiz, we're going to click on the button here. So I'm sorry, my phone decided not to work today, or decided to go away, but we'll walk through and I'll at least show you what this looks like. So when we get to the grade book, we'll have some data. My phone, I've got 3 questions that I can answer. So I'm going to look at this and just so we'll go through these together, just so to make sure we understand these. What video conferencing tools does iClicker work with? We're using Zoom, but it works equally well with any of these, as well as others like Join Me and the many other ones that are out there. Just like iClicker Classic, Cloud does a screen capture of whatever's on your presentation screen at the moment you open the poll. It stores that in the grade book along with the results alongside of it. It also pushes that out to the student device if you've made the decision as the instructor to share that image with your student. And then the third one, a little bit of a trick question because we've not covered this yet, but we will. iClicker assignments is a new feature to Cloud. It's unique to Cloud, and what it does is it lets you post questions that students answer not anonymously, but they answer asynchronously outside the classroom. So you can put questions up, put a date and a time that it's going to become available to the student, put a date and time that it's going to close, and then students answer that within that time period. You can assign points for it, both for performance and also for participation. So that does extend the use of iClicker outside of the synchronous classroom. So that's unique as well. I'm going to come in here and submit my quiz, and now I've got 2 quiz responses, so we'll be able to look at that when we get to the grade book. And I do confirm that I want to end the quiz. The last thing we want to talk about, again, that is unique to iClicker Cloud is exit polls. Before I do that, let me just point one other thing out too. You'll notice that we did a poll and we did polling questions and quizzing within the same session. If we wanted to go back and ask additional polling questions after we've given our quiz, we could do so. So you don't have to completely close out of one iClicker to launch your quiz and then completely close out of it and come back in to launch your poll. Once you've got a session active, you can do polling and quizzing from that same session, and the results are going to be stored in individual columns for the day in the grade book. But I've come to the end of my lecture, and I'm ready to end my lecture. I'm going to come here, click on the X to end the session. Do I want to end my session with an exit poll? Well, I'm going to go ahead and do that. So when I end my session with an exit poll, the toolbar is gone. And what I've done now, I've given my students the ability to give me feedback if they want to do so. 2 questions that they would answer. What's your level of understanding of today's class? 1 being low, 5 being high. And then the second one, is there anything from today's class you'd like explained further? You can enter up to 1,000 characters. That's designed around the concept of muddiest point. You're asking students, are you confused on something? If so, tell me what it is. This is going to be stored in a report that's exportable in the iClicker Cloud Gradebook. When you export it, you could sort it. For example, I want to see what all my ones are. I'm going to read through those. Is there a common confusion point that I need to deal with some way before my next lecture? Or maybe that's what I need to start off in my next lecture to help clear that up before we move on to the next topic. Again,
So can I ask a question real quick?
Yes, sir.
I don't know if you told us only to ask in chat, but this feedback box, is it customizable? Is it always going to be there? Can we make it different? Can we skip it?
Okay, to go backwards, you can skip it. You could just end without an exit poll. Right now, the questions are fixed. So it is these same 2 fixed questions currently. That is on our team's design board for future enhancements, is to be able to add a customized question or questions.
Okay.
So, and yeah, I did say chat box, but feel free to speak up if you have questions. I'm glad to address it, especially right now while we're talking about the exit poll. So
I'd like to follow up
ahead.
on that. Wouldn't it be possible though, rather than using exit polling, to just create a small quiz that then you could write whatever you want and have them do it right as they're leaving? Am I wrong on that?
You could, and that's absolutely, Craig, you could just open a short answer question. However, the difference between the two is the student would need, if they're going to give you a reply, they need to do that right then before you close the session. This just lets you extend it so that it's available when the student comes back into their account to do it. But either would absolutely work. A third thing you could do, if you wanted to customize it, you could put it up as an assignment. And I'll show you how that works as well, where you could just post a couple of questions as an assignment that you would ask students to complete, each week or before the next class meeting. So I'm gonna close out of this. So what I'm gonna do, I want to jump back in and show you on the student side. Let me get a browser open here. I'm going to open up, I'm going to log into an account as a student on my browser. So what I can do now, I remember you're not seeing this because I'm on the wrong monitor. So this is my student account. So this is what a student is going to see after class. This is their score, their total points they've earned to date. If they click into this, they can see on a given day, what percentage of the points they've earned. Now, keep in mind for today, this is not completely accurate because we have some grading we haven't finished yet. And so as we would do additional grading, that percentage would change. If you're using the attendance piece, they can click into attendance and they can see where they marked absent or present for the day. Green means green circle is present, a red X is absent, but you also have the ability to excuse an absence, and I'll show you what that looks like. On the other hand, if you don't want to take attendance and then you don't want this to show up, I'll show you how you can turn attendance off, and then all your dashboard would just be the score option. If we click here, this is where we go in, and this is where the student actually fills in the feedback. I'm just going to type something, just put some letters there just to have something to submit. And so it gives me a check mark that they've completed that one. A couple of other things, the class history. This is where, again, if you're showing this as an instructor, This is where your student can come into the class history. They can come in and review. In this instance, I can see that I've gotten everything that's been graded so far, I've gotten correct. If a student was to come up here and put a flag next to a graded question, that enables them to use this as a study tool. So the student can come back into the study tools option, and they can turn any question that you've graded and shared with them into a flashcard where they would attempt to answer the question and then flip the card over to see if they got it correct. Or they can turn it into a practice test where they actually come in, they see the question, they attempt to answer it, and they see if they got it correct or not. So again, it just expands the use of iClicker beyond the synchronous classroom. It gives students the ability to use the questions you ask in class, outside of class, just to continue to, as another way to make sure they're understanding the concept. So I'm going to close out of, I'm going to go into my instructor account. So now I am logging in, and let me log in. I logged into my wrong instructor account. Let me log out of this one. It might be case sensitive. Let's try this. Okay, so I'm in my this is my instructor account. This is the course demo where we actually ran the session that we just ran. But before I do that, I want to show you real quickly what the course creation process looks like. It's very straightforward. I just clicked on create course. I'm going to choose to use the full suite of polling, quizzing, and attendance. You would put your institution here. Reef University is just it's just a fictitious institution that we use. Your discipline, this is these are pre-populated. So if you find something, you find your discipline or something close to it, you can use that. If you don't see it, you can click on other. We've typed in course name. I'll call this one 201 since I've already got a 101. Start date, end date. It automatically is going to put today's date as the start date for your course, and it's going to assign a date 180 days out as the end date. That means a couple of different things depending on your role. If you're an instructor, when your course hits the end date, it archives. It doesn't disappear. It just stays in a separate file, so it's not cluttering up your active courses that you're currently teaching from. But it does not go away. You can always go back in and unarchive a course if you need to get back into the gradebook for any reason. On the student side, once a course archives, the student can't find it in the search function. So that would mean that, let's say in fall of 22, they couldn't accidentally join your course or try to join your course from fall of 21 because it wouldn't appear in the search. So I've got enough information here. I'll go ahead and say this is 201 section 2 and it's fall of 2001. I can create my course. And so now you see we've got our course created. It is sitting right here. I'm going to click on it because I want to now go into settings. Now you'll notice there's no data here. We haven't run any sessions, so you have nothing here. We'll go back in and review the data that we ran in just a minute. But you're going to come into settings and it's going to take you back to that same course details page. So you can always come back in and make any changes. Devices. Again, you'll notice as we go through this, there are several default settings that have been pre-selected. One of those is it's going to give you the option of mobile devices or iClicker remotes. So if you choose this one and you do have students that are going to use a physical iClicker, you would need to have a base plugged into your presentation computer. Just to be clear, if that's the situation, make sure that you have your base plugged in before you actually launch your course. If you launch the course first and then plug the base in, it won't recognize it. And the base is just plug and play. It just plugs into a USB port on your presentation computer. If you're not going to have any remotes in the classroom, if you're going to be all mobile devices, you can just simply click on mobile devices only. This is where you would turn focus mode on if you wanted to use it. That would mean, you'd get that report of how that device was used during the day. So we can just very easily click that on. You've also got an option of iClicker remotes only. One thing I want to make sure to be clear on is regardless of what a student is using in the class to respond to your questions, every student has the study guide, so they can use the study tools feature. They can review any of the content you've shared with them. Every student has an iClicker Cloud account. If they're using a mobile device, they're going to register their remote in that account, and then after class, they would have access to all the content. This is where you would actually set up attendance. And again, there's a couple of things you can choose to do here. You might say, I have some kind of attendance policy. There's some kind of, maybe connotation to X number of unexcused absences, let's say 4. So I want the grade book to highlight any student once they hit that 3rd unexcused absence, so I can reach out so we can make sure that everybody's aware of the consequences if there's a 4th unexcused absence. You can have attendance automatically run, but what I did when I just typically like to start an attendance session when I start my poll. So really, when you start the poll, 2 things are going on. You're launching the poll, but you're also taking that student's attendance. This is where you would set location settings if you're going to turn it on. You can simply click here, and you're going to drop a pin in the location where your class meets. It can be anywhere from 100 foot to a 500-foot radius circle, 150 feet being the default. Again, that means that a student needs to be inside that circle to be able to join and participate in your course, and also to log themselves as being present. One of the questions I'm frequently asked, this is not tracking students, it's a one-time location check. At the moment they go to check in and you have location settings enabled, it is simply seeing, is that student inside your bubble at that moment? Once they check in, it's not something that it is monitoring students throughout the class or tracking their location beyond that single purpose. Polling, there's a couple of things here. This is where you would set, as the instructor, what you allow your student to see during an active lecture, and also what you allow them to see after class is over. The top 3 options have to do with the synchronous classroom. The default being, when I open my poll, that question is going to push out to my student device. That's how I had it set in the session that I just ran. That's why you saw when the poll opened, the question was available to students and they had the ability to answer it on their device. If I was to use the second option, then what would happen is, rather than the question image push out, students would see an image that said question image hidden by instructor. That means that was purposely telling the student, you need to be in your classroom, in my classroom, looking at my presentation screen. That's where you're going to see the question, but you're going to have the ability to answer it on your device. With the second option, as soon as the poll would close, then I would push the image out, but at the same time, the answer palette would go away. So the student would have the benefit of seeing the question on their device and seeing their answer and the right answer if you graded it. But to see the question itself, they would need to be in the classroom. And then the third option here, just simply the question never pushes out to the student image during class. And now the second 2 choices have to do with history, the dashboard that we saw. You have the option to hide the results from history as well. The main reason I see faculty do this is when they're teaching more than one section of the same course, they want to hide all of the images until both sections have had the same content. Then you can go back and unhide it after each of those sessions. So questions about that before we move over to talking about scoring? Stephanie, anything in the chat, or anybody have any questions they want to ask?
Nothing in the chat.
Okay, so scoring, similar to Classic in a lot of ways with one difference. What's similar is you have the ability to give what we call—
Sorry, I did have a question.
Okay, yeah.
Right, I have a couple questions I'm storing, but there was something about that. Can I just write a question on the board and have them, or even just speak it out loud and tell them put in A, B, C, D, E and not do any presentation, anything?
Absolutely, yeah. So what's going to happen? It's going to, like, let's say that I had iClicker active on the screen you're seeing now, and you just decided to verbalize a question, based on something that you think your students need to answer. It would take a screen capture of whatever's on the screen, but it would record those answers. So when you got back to doing your grading and session history, as you'll see in a minute, when you would see that screen that says, well, oh yeah, this is when I just asked a question about, are we going to have a thunderstorm today? I don't know if you all could tell, but if you can hear the thunder here, but so yeah, you can certainly verbalize a question. You can write a question on the board. I've seen where somebody would have a document camera running through their presentation computer. If that, in that instance, it would capture the whatever you wrote on the question. You can do as I did with that very first question, ask the same question a second or even a third time if you needed to.
Okay, that answers my question, and I will save, I think, most of the other ones, but I wanted to ask also about numerical answers.
Yes.
Whether there is whether it can parse algebraic expressions and things like this. I'm a mathematician, so can it recognize things typed out with parentheses and decide when they're equal?
It does have some mathematical capabilities. We've got an article that I'll make sure I include that gets into that in more detail. So that
Okay, I may be the only one having that question, so I will pause. I don't want to delay the presentation.
No, I know. And Dave, to be honest with you, I am hesitant to answer that question because I need to go back and look at that article myself. I know you can do some basic things with exponents, for example, but I'm not sure how detailed our mathematical palette is in the numeric question option. But I know we do have an article which explains that, so I will find that out.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions before we jump into scoring? Okay, so participation, all or nothing for the session, class meeting, that day that you're asking iClicker questions. The first question is, do I want to give a session participation point? If you don't, you just set this to 0 and then you move on to performance. But if you do want to give session participation point or points, you choose whatever point or point value you're going to award for the day and put that here. Then you pick which of these 5 you want to be your participation hurdle. Anything from they have to answer 1 question to a student would have to answer every question. I typically pick all but 1. So the way this works, if a student comes to your class and you ask 5 questions, doesn't matter if they have a right answer or not, and they answer 4 of them, they're going to get this point. A performance, on the other hand, are question by question. You have a couple of options. The first is each individual question is going to be worth 1 point for correctness. No cap. So the way this is set here, if I ask 5 questions today and a student got all 5 of them correct, on the performance side, they'd earn 5 points. Now you'll notice I can split this up. I could come here and say, I'm going to give students a half a point for just giving me a response. And if they get it correct, if I grade that when they're right, they're going to get an extra half a point. But again, there's no cap here. So in that same scenario, if the student asks 5 questions, if you ask 5 questions and they answered them all, they would have 2.5 points just for that action. And then any question that they got correct, they'd earn an additional half a point. But again, there's no cap, so different days could be worth different amounts. You have a second option where you can put just a cap on your total polling session points. And the way to look at that is 5 is the denominator. So if I choose 5, then that's the total number of performance points the students are going to earn in a day. So if I ask 5 questions that I grade, they're each worth 1 point. If the next day I only ask 4, they're worth 1.25. What that means is every question is worth something, but the exact value is going to vary based on the number of questions you ask in a given day. The reason this is here is if you want to have a equal number of clicker points that you award every day. Let's say that you wanted to award a total of 5 clicker points for the day. I'm going to ask clicker questions 30 days out of the semester, so I know my max is 150 points. I do want to give a session participation point, so I could set this to 4. So the 5 would come from, did the student get the participation point, and then these would be for correctness. So I would know that every day, no session is going to be worth any more or any less than 5 points. That's why you have that second option here. So questions about scoring, either performance or participation, or any kind of strategies or questions, about how you might, any questions like that you might have thought, I think I want to do this, how would I do it based on the scoring options in iClicker? All right. Quizzing. This is where, and again, you can do this either here or you can do this when you're going to give a quiz live in a section. This is where you can just come in and you can just assign the point value for every question in your quiz. Pretty straightforward. And then finally, integrations. This is where you can come in and you can choose your integration. Now, one thing, you all use Sakai. What we have with integration with Sakai is an LTI integration, which uploads a single column cumulative of any point a student has earned, or we have a manual export where you can, we have a Excel sheet that's formatted to export in a format that Sakai will accept the upload for. I've got in the email follow-up I'll send, I've got an article on both of those options. But once we've got our settings in place, we're going to click on save. And so now these are our default settings. So anytime we start a new session, it's going to revert back to the selections that we made here, with the understanding being that on a session by session, on a day by day basis, once you've had a session, you can go back and make changes there. So in the time we have left, I want to jump back into the grade book, and I'm going to go into our Garrett demo, my Garrett demo course. And the reason I want to go here is I've run lots and lots of sessions in this course. So I've got a lot more data here. I've got a lot more students here. So what we're looking at here for this August 19th, this is where I've got one response in my exit poll. We've run a quiz and we've run a polling session, and I took attendance. So if I click on the polling session first, this is going to be, for those of you that have used Classic, this is the session history. This is where I can go back in. I see the screenshots of the questions that I asked. I can click in and I can do any grading or additional grading that I would need to do. So now right out of the gate, I've got a decision to make. I asked this question twice. Do I want to grade it twice? Probably not. So I'm not going to grade it. But then my other question is, do I want to keep this question or delete it? You know, then what happens there is if I delete the question, that might be the reason the student did or didn't get their participation point. So I'm just going to leave this one like as is. I'm not going to grade it, but I'm going to leave it here because I did have a number of students respond to it. I've graded this question, so there's nothing else I need to do here. However, if I wanted to mark multiple answers correct, I can do that here in the session history. And if I click on anything, I can reverse the process if I needed to as well. Move on to the next question. I graded this one in class. This was my target question. I graded this one in class. I'll add to this. I'll add here. Now you'll notice, you see up here where it says possible points. I've got mine set at 5. So that's why as soon as I graded an additional question, then it did the math. And now each of my correct responses is worth 0.8 points. If I was to grade another question that I haven't already graded, then it would change that. It would change the math on that. But I've done my grading. So I'm going to close this out. I mentioned you can change your scoring on a day-by-day basis and also change what a student sees in their history. Let's say I was a couple of options. Let's say that I wanted to award an extra participation point for the day. Maybe it's the last class meeting before fall break. So I'm going to award my students a second participation point for not leaving on fall break early. I can do that. If I came in here and these were uncheck marked, that would mean that I've chosen to not share my questions with my students. But now that everybody's had the same content, now that I've graded everything, I'm going to come here and I'm going to put a check mark here. So that would then mean that my students could log into their iClicker account and they would see the history that or they would see the question that you're now sharing with them. So that session is graded as far as the poll is concerned. I also gave a quiz. So I can come back in here to my quiz and I can click here and I can go ahead and grade this one as correct. One of the things that's unique about quizzing is you have the ability to provide feedback. So if you wanted to give students, confirm why an answer is correct, or maybe confirm why the almost correct answer is incorrect, you could do that here and share that with your students. I'm going to go ahead and go through here and finish my grading. So now when I close out of here and come back, I've got a graded quiz. So I've done all my grading for the day. So if I jump over here to the grade book, I will see it's going to take me first to the overview page where I'll see this is the sum total of participation and performance points that my student has earned cumulatively in this class. But if I want to go to the details tab, I can come in here and I can see this is my session for today. And this is my quiz for today. And I can see Stephanie here as a student. And I can see that she earned all 3 points on her quiz, and she earned 5.20 points for correctness based on out of a possible 6. One of the things about this, if you want to change these, it's very easy to come in here and change the name of your session history. I can say this. And as soon as I save this, that will be reflected. Also, I've got the ability to come in here and edit points before I upload anything to the grade book. So let's say I'm going to go ahead and change this from a 3.2 to I'm going to give Stephanie 4 points for whatever reason. That gets stored as well. And when that change is made, you'll see a little dialog box here. It shows I've made a change. and whatever, when you upload your scores, whatever is in the grade book, even anything you manually updated, that's what will upload to your LMS. If you're using attendance, this is what the attendance grade book looks like. You can see that Stephanie has a check mark because she is present in today's class. But I could come in here and I could excuse Stephanie for an absence. Save this, and then it's going to mark her as excused, and that dropped by 1 to 176. So again, very easy if you're using attendance, and you do need to make some manual adjustments. You can do that in the grade book. 2 other things I want to show really quickly in the time we have left. The first of those is assignments. I mentioned that this is the asynchronous piece that lets you create an assignment that students take outside the class. What you're looking at here, I've got 2 assignments that are open that are due on the 20th. I've got 2 other assignments, one of which is going to open next Monday, and one of is going to open a week from Monday. So what I've done is I've just gone ahead and created in advance a couple of assignments for my students. But if I wanted to create another one, let's say I wanted to create one for the first week in September, I'm going to click on create. I'm going to give it an assignment name. I can choose when I want it to be visible to students, and I'm going to make this one visible September the 6th, and I'm going to have it available for that entire week. So what's going to happen at midnight on the 6th, this is going to be available to students to complete, and on the midnight on the 10th, it's going to automatically close. This is where I can award points. Now, you can create your questions for assignments in any application. I mean, so whatever you'd want to use, you can do that. You just need to save it as a PDF for the upload. So I'm going to click on choose a file, and I've got an assignment demo on my desktop. Here we go. So here's my assignment demo I'm going to upload. So what it's doing, it's going to upload the questions I've created. It's going to show me the panel down here. So before I make this public, I need to make sure that the question I'm asking students, that my question type in iClicker matches. Multiple choice is the default. So I can go through here and answer these 2. This one's a basic numeric question. So I'll just put numeric in. This is a short answer. So I'm looking for this answer string. And then this one is a target question, again, where I'm asking students to come in here and just basically show me, I'm putting the target range for which I'll accept the correct answer. So once I click on create an assignment, now I've got that 3rd assignment built. So again, this is something where a student's just going to come in, they'll see if they have an open assignment, they can click in to complete it. And once they do complete it, that will be added to your grade book as well. So it's a 3rd option you have as a way to use iClicker with your students. And then finally, the people tab, again, another feature that is unique to iClicker Cloud is the ability to share your course with a co-instructor, or if you have a graduate, a TA that's working with you. What you see what I've done here, I've got some pending invites out here. If I wanted to add an instructor, I could just come here, type in their email address, and I'll use Stephanie. I can choose her role. And what's going to happen is I'm going to add Stephanie. It's going to send her an email. Once she clicks on that link, she would have access to this course, but she wouldn't have access to any of my other courses. So this is just a way, if any of you have any, as a graduate student or co-instructor in that category, it's very easy to share a course with that person so that you're not having to try to pass off a flash drive or not having to hand any materials from one to the other. You just both have access to the same course. You log into your own individual iClicker instructor account and then open launch the course, and you start asking your questions using iClicker. So it is about 5 till. I want to just make sure that I know, have we addressed that? Stephanie, I see a couple of things in the chat window. Is there anything that we need to address here, or any questions anybody has?
So I included some information about our numeric response, which includes scientific notation. I think
Perfect.
I addressed, David, your question, but if not, just let us know. And if anybody else has any other questions at this time too.
I have a question about students signing up for a course and
Okay.
how much it costs, how long they have, if there's any duration they know about, if they drop the course within 14 days, do they get their money back, things like this?
Yes. So when if a student signs up, they get a 14-day grace period within their account. So that is designed to cover that dropping and adding that might happen. A subscription is $15.99 retail for a student subscription. They can get that a couple of ways. The bookstore has printed access cards that they can purchase there, or they can purchase directly inside their account. $15.99 for 6 months, $24.99 for a year. And it's platform based. So if once a student has an active subscription, then they can use iClicker in as many courses as are using it during that subscription period. So it's not a per course. The cost is for the time period.
Okay, and the only people who can join the course are the ones that we're moving our roster into the program. They're the only people who have the option to join.
Well, I mean, somebody else could join the course, but you have the option as an instructor. Let's say that I see that somebody is in this course. Let's say that Sheila Brewer is not supposed to be in this course, or I want to remove. I can simply come up here and remove her from the course, and she's gone. Now you can always come back and reverse the process, but once you remove somebody from the course, they can't join unless you let them back in.
Mm-hmm. But there's nothing to stop a student from, say, joining lots of online versions of a course where the student just wants more study materials. I'm going to join a bunch of them and then look at the study materials for several different lectures.
Yeah, there's no way to prevent that. You can remove them, and once you remove them, they don't have access to anything. But there's no way. Yeah, there's no way on the front end to prevent somebody from joining. No.
Mm-hmm. I'm interested in what focused mode does. I really don't want my students to, I ask a question and then they just look it up real quick on their other window or something. Which is why I would really prefer to use Classic, but I don't think that UVA supports Classic anymore. So what do I get with focused mode? I mean, there's nothing to prevent them from just having an iPad open next to their computer or something, or a different device or.
Yeah. So what you're going to get? I had opened the focus mode report for the session that we just ran, and so we had two participants, Stephanie and myself. So you see, Stephanie was out of focus 10 times. You can see the amount of time she was in focus and the amount of time she was out of focus. So obviously in her case, she was toggling back and forth between the chat window and answering some responses there. So that would have been why she was leaving and coming back into focus. And if we come back down and find myself, I had I only left focus one time. I was only out of focus for 26 seconds. And again, you can see the amount of time I was in focus. So it's really the purpose of focus mode. It's just a set of guardrails. It's just to help, kind of train that student that, hey, you're using this mobile device for this purpose, and just give them a report so that they're doing something else. Maybe they can concentrate, literally focus on that a little more in the next class meeting to use it for its intended purpose.
I'd like to just make a quick comment. David, I've used this for several years now. And as long as it's low stakes, doing it in quiz, yeah, you're right. They can have something else up. But as long as it's low stakes, and as long as they understand that this is formative, right? That you're gonna immediately look at who got it right and who got it wrong, and you're gonna talk about why. I like it because I would give 60% just for answering the question, and you get the extra 40% if you get it right the first time. And then sometimes I would let them have a second try at it, and they would end up earning all the points. So, it's, as long as it's low stakes, I think I find the students like it. So I have a question though, Glenn. I've because I've used it for several years, and yes, now UVA is moving just to the iCloud part. I've had issues with students who come to class and they have had an account on the physical device, and now they're getting an iCloud account. And we find that it's almost like they have two accounts, and they'll start using the one, but it's not recording the grades, or it's not recording what's going on. Has any of that been fixed, or do you have any tips on
Are
that?
you talking about with Classic, that being an issue? Yeah, it's a little, one of the nice things about cloud is it's not uncommon. Let me back up. When a student creates their account, we highly recommend they use their UVA email address. Okay, so if a student creates a second account, we can merge those together. So let's say that they created an account using their Gmail account to begin with. And in doing so, we take two accounts and make it into one. So it's that second account is never out there to cloud up the situation. So what I think you may be referring to is a student maybe first semester freshman year, they buy iClicker A and register it. And then they sell it back to the bookstore and they buy a new one. And now they're using Clicker B. And then the third, and so pretty soon that one student has 3, 4, 5 different remotes registered to them, and it starts confusing the issue. So yeah, with cloud, because it's cloud based, not that they can't create two accounts, but we can remedy that and make it so that the second account goes away and there's only the one workable account.
Okay. They also used to sell them to each other.
Yes. Yeah. But and then when they register that, then all of a sudden you've got Clicker with 1, 2, 3 ABC could be registered to 2 or 3 different students at the same campus, and that can cause some chaos as well. Yeah.
So maybe it's better that we go away from that. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? All right. Well, as I said, I have recorded this. I've got an email that's partially put together. I'm going to add some things to it based on the questions that have come up today. I'll get that out to you all later this afternoon. I'll just wait till I get the recording back. Will probably be what triggers me sending that. But you'll have my contact information in there. You'll have Stephanie's contact information. So any questions that you have, don't hesitate to reach back out to either one of us. Again, we look forward to working with you. We appreciate your time very much. And any questions, please be in touch.
Thank you all.
Thank you all. All right. Thank you, Ann. Appreciate it. Yes, I want to